Hello! My name is Sophie, and since this is my first time recording a video, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. So I am a digital artist and a writer. I mainly write fanfic, but I am trying to get an original work published for the first time, hopefully sometime this year, querying soon. Fingers crossed. So as a writer, that also means that I'm a pretty avid reader. I've read about maybe 8 books this year, and it's barely March. Among those 8 books, I read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by sarahjmaas. If you'd like to know my general thoughts on the series as a whole, I thought it could have been a lot better. No, really, I am disappointed because there was a lot of things, a lot of different tropes, a lot of different plot lines that I thought could have been really cool, but every time that we actually saw the execution of it, every time that we actually did or did not do something with it, it just fell extremely flat, and it was unfortunately very disappointing. One of the many grievances I have is that the characters are often given traits or backstories that, you know, if these traits or backstories were executed well and woven into the character to make them feel more alive, they would have been very interesting, but instead the traits are just like slapped onto them just so sarahjmaas can say, hey, look, I made a 3-dimensional character. They do this and then they do that. See, I know how to make characters. It's very much that. One such example is Rhysand and how the sexual abuse and trauma that he goes through actually does nothing to help his development or character arc, and therefore it is just there as shock value and cheap drama. In order to prove this point, I'm going to use 4 other male characters from media. These actually all happen to be characters from video games. It's okay if you're not a gamer. I'm going to provide ample background and clips to help support my point. Many of these clips were recorded by me, and if not, then credit is in the corner. And of course, before we get into everything, I want to go ahead and give trigger warnings for this video. As sort of mentioned in the title and what I just said, we're going to be talking about sexual assault, slavery, sexual slavery. We're going to be showing clips of violence, mainly stabbing. We're going to talk about grooming and the manipulation of a main character by a love interest. And before we go any further, I'd also like to give a spoiler warning for A Court of Thorns and Roses, the entire series, Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and Tales of Symphonia. So let's provide backstory for everybody, kind of see where all the traits line up and why I chose these particular 4 characters. We'll start first with Rhysand. Rhysand is the High Lord of the Night Court. He is tall, dark, and handsome. He has wings, and you know all of this. When the main character, Feyre, is first introduced to Rhysand in A Court of Thorns and Roses, other characters refer to him as the Whore of Amarantha. And Amarantha is the main antagonist of A Court of Thorns and Roses. We learn in the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, that Rhysand agreed to be Amarantha's sex slave in order to spare the lives of his people and his friends. Behind the general facade of, you know, the suaveness and their charisma, he does admit to Feyre that he hated every single encounter that he had with Amarantha and took absolutely no pleasure in any of them. Indeed, this is coercion. This is textbook coercion, and this is rape. I am not trying to argue otherwise, nor should anybody. Despite all of this, Rhysand is more than willing to use his charms to his advantage to sort of get ahead and meet his own goals. Amongst these charms is, you know, forcefully kissing Feyre in book 1 to save her from Amarantha's wrath. Also making her lap dance on him for also safety. I don't know. I mean, just, you get the point. So, point is, he is totally cool being suave, despite his trauma. Okay, let's move on. Let's bring in 3 of the other men that I mentioned. Again, just brief backstory. I don't want to be here all day. I just want to mention the important parts that are parallel to Rhysand. And yes, I did say 4. originally. Don't worry, I'm gonna get to the fourth one. I just want to get to these three first because they're the most similar. So let's begin first with everybody's favorite vampire spawn, Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3. In the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition monster manual, we have two kinds of vampires. So the first kind is the one that we all sort of know just from pop culture. This is the Dracula. This is the vampire that can turn into a bat, that can turn into mist, charm people to do their bidding, and the most important power of all is that they can bite other people and turn them into vampires. Now, in Dungeons & Dragons, which Baldur's Gate 3 is based off of, when someone is bitten by a vampire and turned into a vampire, they're not turned into the same kind of vampire. So the first kind we're going to call a vampire lord. They are turned into vampire spawn, which means that they have none of the strengths that a vampire lord does. They cannot turn into mist or anything like that. They do, however, have all of the weaknesses, including the bloodlust. Another unique power is that a vampire lord can command their vampire spawn to do anything, and they are unable to resist their commands. So Astarion is a vampire spawn, so he is a slave, and his master Cazador was not a very nice lord at all. Cazador instructed Astarion to go into the city every night and to seduce somebody to bring him back so Cazador could have a meal. Astarion was expected to sleep with these people in order to lure them back. He slept with most, if not all, of his victims. And this is what Astarion has to say about the experience.
To just go along with what I was being told to do. A moment of disgust to force myself through, and then I could have carried on just like before. I tried to pick beautiful people where I could, but there were so many over the years. After a while, you stop caring.
So again, this is coercion. Astarion may have been sleeping with people that consented to the encounter, but remember that he was only sleeping with them to lure them back, by the way, to death. He was coerced to sleep with them in the first place by Cazador. So this is called rape by proxy. I also want to point out that it's entirely possible that Cazador sexually abused Astarion himself. There's little in the current canon to suggest this, but back during early access, for those of you who don't know, early access was kind of like the beta of the game before it properly released. That's where the developers and the writers were still playing around with the canon of the game. So there's a scene in early access where Astarion could admit to the player that he had a dream about Cazador, and Cazador was being enticing to him. The player, should they wish to be very cruel, can say a joke to the line of, "I didn't expect that you wanted a master in the bedroom," to which Astarion has this response.
"You know what separates us from animals? Choice. I choose to travel with you. A dog would do it on instinct. To fulfill a need. Disrespect me again! And I won't choose to kill you. I'll do it on instinct. To fulfill my need to hear you scream."
Take that what you will. Let's move on to another character. The elven assassin from Dragon Age Origins, Zevran Arainai. Zevran is the suave, Spanish-accented Antonio Banderas-sounding elven assassin in Dragon Age Origins. He joins your party should you choose to spare him after he tries to kill you unsuccessfully. He was trained by an elite order of assassins called the Antivan Crows. And he says that many, many times he would seduce his victims in order to make the act of killing them all the easier. In fact, the Antivan Crows bought him from the brothel that his deceased mother used to work at, primarily because of his good looks when he was a child.
I was but a boy of 7 when I was purchased, for 3 sovereigns, I'm told, which is a good price, considering I was all ribs and bone and didn't know the pommel of a dagger from the pointy end. Do I prefer women? Yes, I believe I do. But you must understand that a certain open-mindedness is sought by the Crows in their recruits, for very good reasons. I I have had to do many things in my work as an assassin, some pleasant and many not so. The crows recruit elven assassins because we are considered beautiful by humans. I'm sure you can imagine the rest.
If that doesn't scream, grooming, then I don't know what does. Like Astarion above, it is evident that both of these men tried to find pleasure where they could, but at the end of the day, they were only engaging in these encounters to prolong their life. The crows may not have directly ordered Zevran to sleep with his victims, like Castor did to Astarion, but they were very clear that failure to kill his mark would result in death. So Zevran is only doing these things in order to protect his own life. And this is very much like Rhysand, who submitted to the whims of Amarantha to, secure his life and the life of the people that he cared about. Okay, the final backstory that I am pushing on to you is of one Zelos Wilder from Tales of Symphonia. Symphonia is the game that is unlike the rest of these. One thing I have to note is that Tales of Symphonia is a T-rated game, and unlike the other three examples that I'm getting into, there is no explicit romance path between you and the other characters. Keeping that in mind, let me tell you about Zelos Wilder. He is a handsome and privileged chosen with great power and status. However, he realized that at a young age, a lot of people wanted to get close to him and were nice to him, not because they actually liked him, but because they wanted to be in his good graces thanks to his elevated social status. So in order to deal with the pressures of being chosen and the pressures of society to be both like a noble person and a figurehead for the church, he developed this personality so people could leave him alone, and the personality was that of a buffoonish womanizer and an incessant flirt. And indeed, he used his good looks to skate by in life. For example, we know that when he went to university, he would charm the other female students to take his tests and do his homework for him, despite him being quite good at the subjects himself. And if that's not enough, there is a game mechanic. By the way, we're gonna get to game mechanics later. That literally allows Zelos to talk to all the women in the world in order to gain money and items. You are meant to exploit his good looks. All right, we've got our boys, we've got our trauma, so let's see how that trauma affects their character development. Or doesn't. I said we were going to talk about game mechanics, and really there's only one that's important enough for this video. So these three games that we're talking about all employ a variation of an approval system. Basically what this means is that the game keeps track of the choices you make, of the things that you say, and should these choices or words align with a certain character's values, or, just maybe you're just being nice to them, you will gain a positive approval. And then likewise, if you make choices that go against their principles or ideals, or if you're just being mean to them, you'll gain negative approval. In Dragon Age and Baldur's Gate 3, the game directly tells us how much approval we have with the character. Both games also tell us when the character approves or disapproves, so it's very easy to see what choices the character likes versus the choices that the character doesn't like. And this mechanic also tells us exactly how our companions feel about us at that certain time. In Tales of Symphonia, the affection system is what we in the gaming community like to call a guide dang it, which basically means that unless you're following a guide, it is very difficult to know what sort of path you're on, like what sort of points everybody's on, because the game will not tell you. You won't find out until the very critical points who has the most affection in your party and who doesn't. So having an actual number tells us a lot about the motivations of these three characters. This video is supposed to be mainly about Rhysand. Don't worry, he's in a corner. I'm gonna get to him. So Zevran and Astarion are, for lack of a better word, easy. Okay, what I mean by that is the amount of approval needed from either men in order to start a sexual relationship is very low, or at least it's much lower than one would expect. Okay, let's start with Zevran. According to this guide, and thank you to Woofy on WordPress, the player needs positive 23 approval in order to trigger a conversation that can lead to having sex for the first time. 23 is a rather low number considering the approval rankings shown here and taken directly from the Dragon Age wiki. As you can see here, positive 100 is the max amount of approval, negative 100 is the max amount of disapproval, and 23 is, all things considered, not that much. In-game, it is given as a neutral disposition. Likewise, for Astarion, all the player needs for him to proposition them at the celebration party in Act 1 is to be at fair approval. Note what it says about trust. Indeed, these two characters are not sleeping with you because they trust you. It's actually the opposite. They're sleeping with you in order to gain more trust. They are doing exactly what they have been doing for the past few years in order to survive. Use their good looks to their advantage, regardless of whether or not they actually like the person. Rhysand was doing this exact thing with Amarantha. He was also acting quite flirtatious with Feyre and trying to get her to trust him. And he definitely wasn't above flirtation in order to achieve that. So how does this manipulative approach affect all of these relationships? Well, with Astarion, should you build his trust, he will eventually confess to you about his manipulations and also tell you that he has no idea what it means to be in a real relationship.
Look, I had a plan. A nice, simple plan. Seduce you, sleep with you, manipulate your feelings so you'd never turn on me. I don't know how else to be with someone. No matter how much I'd like to.
To continue a romance with Astarion, the player must enter a chaste relationship. For the time being, in order to give him his space. And the reason he needs space in the first place is so that he can figure out what exactly you as the player mean to him, what does he want out of you, what does being in a real relationship mean, and this is all a direct result from his sexual trauma. Zevran is a little more idiotic. I say this affectionately, trust me, I'd love this character a lot. He tries to gift you an earring, and if you ask him if the earring means anything, you know, if it's an actual token of affection or if he's just giving it to you, he becomes frustrated because he too has stumbled upon this problem of not knowing what you as a player means to him, and he has no idea how to treat you as not a victim.
Look, just take it. It's meant a lot to me, but so has what you've done. Please, take it. You are a very frustrating woman to deal with. Do you know that? We pick up every other bit of treasure we come across, but not this. You don't want the earring, you don't get the earring. Very simple.
Following the earring, you will have a breakup arc where Zevran will refuse to sleep with you and even give you the time of day. He'll just be very distant. But after a while, he comes to his senses and he admits that he was being stupid. And this time when he offers you the earring, he is clear in his intentions. He says that it is a token of affection and it means whatever the player wants it to mean, if it's a proposal or not. Again, the rift and the doubt that he experiences stems directly from the trauma. Even Zelos, though more subtly than others, he also has his arc of doubt. You see, the evil organization, the church the evil organization behind the church, Crucius, has offered Zelos an out because Zelos does not want to be the Chosen anymore. So they tell him, hey, if you're a double agent for us, we'll make you not the Chosen so you can be free of responsibility. And Zelos is like, great. But if the player, Lloyd, is giving him affection and is trusting him and is nice to him, then he starts to have doubts as to whether or not he's doing the right thing.
I refuse to vanish. And so I don't want anyone else to be destroyed. I want you to live too, Zelos.
I think I'm gonna cry.
Don't make fun of what I'm saying. Tomorrow, once we're sure that Altessa is okay, I'm going to challenge Mythos to a final battle. But if that's the way you feel, I'll be too worried to bring you along.
You're going to fight? Do you really think you can unite the worlds?
I can, and I will. I'm not going to run away.
All right, I hear you. I swear, your fervent enthusiasm is enough to melt all the snow in Flanor. I'm in. I guess I'll give this not running away thing a shot.
Once the world is at peace, you can run away all you like.
Gee, thanks. Man, I can't believe I'm joining the weaker side. This isn't like me at all.
Are you starting to see a theme here? Finally, I am now going to bring up the fourth character that I mentioned earlier. This character is Fenris from Dragon Age 2. I did not bring him up earlier because, unlike the other three, Fenris does not use affection or sexuality in order to get what he wants. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
So I have your word. I tell you, and you let me go.
Yes, you have my word.
Her name is Verania. She is in Carinus, serving a magister by the name of Ehrman.
A servant, not a slave.
She's not a slave.
I believe you.
Fenris does not like people. And I'm okay with that. But, in similar parallels, Fenris is an ex-slave, and we have confirmed proof from the writing staff that his ex-master, Denarius, did indeed sexually abuse Fenris. Entering a romance with Fenris is a very wild art, because even though the two of you can have a romance scene in Act 2, depending on your approval, no matter what happens, Fenris will always leave the player after that scene.
I began to remember my life before. Just flashes. It's too much. This is too fast. I cannot do this.
We can work through this.
I'm sorry. I feel like such a fool. This should never have happened in the first place. Forgive me.
And again, because of the horrors that he went through, intimacy is just as hard for him as it is for the other three. It creates doubt. It creates a wedge, even with the people who mean well. And for Rhysand, his trauma... Oh, actually, it doesn't do anything. After he is freed from Amarantha, he still thinks about her, he still loathes her, but he never experiences any sort of failure with intimacy towards Feyre. Hell, he never at any point asks himself, hey, am I doing this because I'm trying to get ahead, or because I actually like her? Are my affections real? And for those of us who finished A Court of Mist and Fury, we know why he doesn't ask these questions. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. Even if he wasn't setting out to manipulate Feyre in the first place, never has that hardship ever come between them. Never has that hardship that comes with being a sex slave ever come between them, like in the way that it came between Fenris and his love interest. And think about it, he was Amarantha's sex slave for 50 years. Fenris hasn't even been alive for half that time. I don't think. I have to recheck his age. And look how much Fenris is struggling with that, even with somebody that he cares for and wants to love. If you still need proof of how Rhysand's sexual abuse plot does absolutely nothing for his character development, or lack thereof, look how the different narratives frame the encounters between the victims and their abusers.
Look at you, crawling back after abandoning your family. You should be begging our forgiveness.
Forgiveness? You've never forgiven anything. Every mistake, every slip was punished.
I strove for perfection in all things, even those as imperfect as you. A pity you amounted to so little, despite my efforts.
No! No. Fuck you. And fuck everything you've ever done to me!
Fenris doesn't belong to anyone.
Do I detect a note of jealousy? It's not surprising. The lad is rather skilled, isn't he?
Shut your mouth, Daenerys.
The word is master.
You are no longer my master. You can return with me, Zevran. I know why you did this, and I don't blame you. It's not too late. Come back and we'll make up a story. Anyone can make a mistake.
And I'm not about to let that happen.
What? You've gone soft.
I'm sorry, my old friend, but the answer is no. I'm not coming back. And you should have stayed in Antiva.
You okay, Lloyd?
What are you doing? I thought you wanted me to set you free of your fate as a Chosen.
Oh, you know what? I changed my mind. That won't matter after we beat the snot out of you anyway.
And as for Rhysand... Okay, this is chapter 54 from A Court of Mist and Fury. This is Rhysand telling Feyre everything after she has found out about the mating bond. But your final trial came, and when she started torturing you, something snapped in a way I couldn't explain. Only that seeing you bleeding and screaming undid me. It broke me at last, and I knew as I picked up that knife to kill her, I knew right then what you were. I knew that you were my mate, and you were in love with another male, and had destroyed yourself to save him, and that I didn't care. If you were going to die, I was going to die with you. I couldn't stop thinking it over and over as you screamed, as I tried to kill her. You were my mate. My mate. My mate. Okay. So... Let me get this straight. Rhysand attacked Amarantha, not for himself or the abuse that he suffered at her hands, nor for the people of Valaris, nor for his friends, nor for the other courts, but because she was killing Feyre. It was all for Feyre. Let me make that clear. Hold on. Rhysand killing his abuser has nothing to do with him, and has everything to do with his love interest. It completely ignores the horrors that he went through. The author took away his opportunity to have closure. And every example that I've given above, they got to have that moment. But Rhysand did not. He doesn't get to kill her for his sake. Oh, and you want to know why? Remember I said that there was a reason why he wasn't questioning these things about do I actually like her, do I not? It's all the same reason. And it goes back to the stupid mating bond. I called it stupid. God, I'm telling you, this plot point ruined the first two books. Just completely in one fell swoop. Like, think about it. If we didn't have a mating bond and he didn't know who Feyre was when they met, we could have had a really interesting arc between them. And we can do that by using the framework above. For example, instead of seeing her and falling in love with her at first sight because, fated mates, whatever, he could have singled her out as an opportunity in order to escape Amarantha, in order to free the courts from Amarantha's rule. But, since he just met her, he has no idea if he can really trust her, nor does he have any idea if she's capable of it. But he's willing to take the risk because he's desperate to be rid of Amarantha. So, he keeps helping her. And as he's helping her, he tells himself that he's being nice and flirtatious for his own gain. It's so that she will trust him and she will do things for him, such as going up against Amarantha and performing all these tasks in order to free everybody. And he's slowly starting to think that he might actually like this girl. So then, when we get to the point where Amarantha is beating Feyre to death, he stabs her, not to save Feyre, but because he saw an opportunity. He saw that Amarantha was distracted, and by gods, he took it. He then gets to kill Amarantha for himself and for all of the pain that she inflicted upon him. Now, with his abuser gone, he gets to wonder if everything that he did for Feyre was real, or if it was just a means to an end. He starts to have doubts. And spending more time with Feyre muddles those doubts. He doesn't know. Not after 50 years of sexual abuse. He doesn't know if he can be vulnerable. And so what we get is an actual slow burn. That's the arc that we should have gotten. That's the arc Rhysand deserved to have. But no, he doesn't get to have any of that. He doesn't get to have any intrigue or any sort of cool doubt arc because God/sarahjmaas told him before the events of the book that Feyre was his mate, his love interest, his whatever you want to call it. And then therefore everything he does now has to be about her, and he doesn't get to have any individuality. So really, it begs the question, what was the point? If his experiences do nothing to shape his character in general, nor do they seem to shape him as a person, and we know they didn't, as evidenced above, then why is it in his story at all? We clearly see from the examples above how such an experience shapes a person, how it shapes their stories and their personalities, and they can all deal with it in different ways, but at the very end of the day, it is core to their person. And even better, we get to see how much stronger they become after confronting those demons. But there is nothing for Rhysand to conquer. There is no arc. Once Amaranth is gone, she's gone. And it doesn't really feel like she made any mark on him. And if you still don't believe me, pretend that Amarantha and Rhysand never had sex. The story still remains the same. I get that ACOTAR is not a video game, there's no approval system, there's no choices, but narratives are narratives, stories are stories. It doesn't matter the medium. If you are the writer, it is up to you to craft a narrative that makes sense. Astarion, Zevran, Zelos, and Fenris all go through bouts of questioning their self-worth, and they wonder if they're worthy of friendship and love, and confirming that self-worth, confirming that they do deserve these things, giving them confidence in who they are, enough to leave the past behind and stay with people that do truly care about them and love them, not just for their looks or whatever sexual favors they can give. It's one of the most beautiful experiences in any kind of narrative, book, video game, TV show. It's transcendent. And it's a really, really big shame that Rhysand doesn't get to do that. I said earlier that it's the arc he deserves, and I think he would have been a much more interesting character if he had gone through it. And I sort of wonder that if he had this sort of development, if he had better development in general, he wouldn't have turned into the raging asshole that was Rhysand in the 4th book. Seriously, Court of Silver Flames. Why? If you know, you know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this. If you like this, let me know. I mean, I love to talk. So give me more things to talk about. I can talk about tropes or books or games or a wide variety of topics, actually. Or maybe you disagree with me, and that's okay. You can leave a nicely worded comment and we can have a conversation about it. All right, thanks again.